Hey, welcome guys. Dr. Nathan Thompson here, author of Transformation 28, creator of the T28 Challenge, and clinic director here at Exemplify Health Center. And today I want to go over with you fasting for healthy longevity. Now, you don't have to look very far. Everyone is searching about fasting and what it is and how you do it. And today I want to talk to you about some of the benefits, maybe some of the drawbacks with fasting, the different types of fasting, how you do it, and who shouldn't do it, and how you actually start and how you actually stop and break a fast. So let's get right into it. So there's tons of benefits of fasting. And what I mean by fasting is I mean just not eating. So by not eating, in fact, in the United States, we actually eat too much. We're actually overfed, we're undernourished. So the idea with fasting is that we actually don't eat as much. So there's been tons of research out there that actually has shown some of the amazing benefits of fasting. And Johns Hopkins University, Mark Mattson is his name, actually found that it helps the brain ward off Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease while improving memory and mood. So it actually has a neuroprotective mechanism when you actually fast. Particularly for people, 40% of people in the United States are actually have problems with insulin sensitivity, and they're either on their way or they already have type 2 diabetes. So it helps to improve insulin sensitivity, helps to improve blood pressure, but also oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is some of the things that actually cause degenerative illness in a person's body, things like heart disease, things like cancer. Type 2 diabetes is all caused by an excessive amount of oxidative stress that damages the body, and the body can't keep up with its healing mechanisms. Helps with weight loss. This is a great way if you need to lose weight. Starting with a fast is a great way in order to reset your insulin levels, reset your hormones, help to reset your hunger levels. It actually helps to promote a longer and healthier life by keeping the mitochondria, these are also known as the powerhouses or the engines within the cell, young. So you're only as really as young as the mitochondria inside the cells are. So these are the things that are producing energy within your cells. Now, how it does this is through a process known as autophagy. And autophagy is when the body starts to recycle inefficient cells. So when you undergo fasting at a certain time frame of fasting, the body actually takes some of the cells that aren't working very well or they're on their way out and they're starting to die. It takes them and it actually kills them off really quickly so that the body can actually become more efficient and produce healthy, new, more efficient cells. It actually helps with immune system regeneration. So this is really important as far as like increasing stem cell regeneration and making the immune system work better. I mean, during the holiday season, you actually see people get sick more often. It's because we're eating too much. We're eating sugar that actually lowers the immune system. So this actually helps to jumpstart the immune system. And it also helps to lower inflammation and healing of the gastrointestinal system. So by lowering this inflammation and helping the lining of that gastrointestinal system heal, this helps with people who suffer with leaky gut syndrome, any kind of autoimmune diseases, some kind of adrenal type issues, or maybe even thyroid issues can help by incorporating different types of fasting into their lifestyle. These are the types of fasting that I'm going to talk about during this webinar. The first one is called a 5-day water fast. Number 2, I'm going to talk about intermittent fasting. And then number 3, I'm going to talk about the T28 nutrition plan from my book, Transformation 28. So the first one I want to talk about is the 5-day water fast. Now, the first thing that comes to mind with a 5-day water fast is people usually think like I'll probably die. And I know the idea of not eating for 5 days can seem a little bit daunting, but actually the body can survive 30 plus days without food. Now the idea behind the 5-day water fast is to help calm inflammation, to help heal the gastrointestinal system, to help regenerate the immune system, and to increase stem cell formation by inducing what's known as autophagy. Now, autophagy is when the body destroys inefficient cells and recycles them to produce new, more efficient cells. And really, when you look at the 5-day water fast, it entails just water and minerals only for 5 days. So when you do a 5-day water fast, there's a lot of cool things that happen inside of the body. So if you decide to do a 5-day water fast, you got to understand what you're going to be going through as you go through the 5 days. So day 1, you're going to feel pretty good. Now, your body actually begins burning glycogen for energy, which is stored sugar. And glycogen is stored in the muscles and is stored in the liver. And you can actually store about 500 to 600 grams of glycogen inside your body, which means that you can run on sugar only for anywhere from 18 to 24 hours, depending on what your metabolism is. So by day 2, you actually start running out of glycogen, and so you start actually feeling tired. You feel lethargic. You may have flu-like symptoms. Sometimes they actually call this the keto flu, and the body actually starts to try to use fat as an energy source. So your blood sugar starts to drop, and that's when you actually start to feel a little bit tired, a little bit lethargic. Now on day 3 is actually where ketosis happens for most people. Now, this is where fat is burned as an energy source, and this is known as ketones. This is really an alternative and a cleaner source of fuel for the body. And a lot of times people say, well, what about the brain? Doesn't the brain need glucose to survive? And actually, the brain can actually run on ketones as well as an energy source. Basically, what starts to happen is the body starts to recognize that it's undergoing fasting, and this is actually where what you know as autophagy, where this actually begins. It's that the body starts to become more efficient, and it starts to really dump excess cargo like an airplane. So if an airplane was too heavy and had a hard time taking off, or it was going to crash because it was too heavy, first thing that they want to do is they want to dump the excess cargo. So the body realizes that, hey, we're undergoing starvation. So what it starts to do is it starts to dump the excess cargo. So during this stress of fasting, this autophagy is upscaled and is increased. So day 4 is where ketosis and autophagy continues. Now the body has a new source of fuel. So now we're actually putting a more clean and a more efficient form of fuel that the body is now actually running on. Now when you get to day 5, this is where the magic happens. You have stem cell regenerations. Now stem cells are intracells that differentiate into other cells inside of the body. If you've actually watched the news or you look at anything in natural healthcare, and you're seeing that like stem cells are gaining traction, where they're injecting stem cells into joints to help regenerate cartilage. In fact, I actually had a stem cell injection into my shoulder to help regenerate the cartilage within the shoulder. As far as stem cells, you want a lot of stem cells inside of your body, and as you get older, you have less and less of these stem cells. Now, as you go through your 5-day fast, you can see what types of fuel that you're actually burning as an energy source. So when you start off, you can actually see that glucose is going to be the preferred method of fuel starting off. And then as you can see into 48 hours, you can see that ketones as a product of fat burning begins to elevate. And then right around the 72-hour point, this is where the first part of the magic actually happens. And this is where you convert into what's known as ketosis. So here's how you do a 5-day water fast. Now, a lot of times when people do a 5-day water fast, all they do is they just drink water, but one of the secrets of doing a proper 5-day water fast is actually to keep your minerals high. Now remember, if you're not eating any kind of food, you're not going to be getting any kind of minerals. So the purpose of minerals inside of the body is to provide for cellular energy, for muscle function, for neurological function. So you want to make sure that you're keeping your minerals up during the 5-day water fast. So some of the minerals that you're going to need for a 5-day water fast are as follows. Number 1, you're going to need Himalayan pink salt, and this will dissolve into clear water. This is to keep your sodium levels up. The next one that you're going to need is known as potassium chloride. Now the most popular brand is called No Salt, and you want to avoid pill forms of potassium chloride as it's a lot easier to dissolve into water if it's not in a pill form. The next thing that you're going to need is red mill baking soda. Now red mill is preferred for its purity. Please note that this is not baking powder, this is baking soda. Next one I recommend as far as water is concerned is going to be Evian water. Now Evian water is recommended because of its dissolved minerals, and you're going to need approximately 2 liters per day for your 5-day water fast. And then finally we're going to need a mixing jug, and you want a glass mixing jug, not plastic, to make sure you're not getting any toxins from the plastic. And you want a mixing jug that is at least able to hold 2 liters of water. So what you're going to do is you're going to be using for 5 days this water fasting recipe. So what you're going to need per day is 2 liters of Evian water, and then you're going to put that into the glass mixing jug, and then within that 2-liter glass mixing jug, a half teaspoon of the Himalayan pink salt, 1/2 teaspoon of the red mill baking soda, 1 teaspoon of the potassium chloride in the form of no salt. Then you're going to mix all those ingredients up, and then that's what you are going to be drinking throughout the day. Now, if you go through the entire 2 liters, you want to limit the amount of fresh water to 1 additional liter per day. And if you need more water than that, so if you're essentially drinking more than 3 liters, then mix a second batch, and then you want to add all of the same ingredients, except you're going to cut the no salt to just, instead of 1 teaspoon, to 1/4 teaspoon. So if you go beyond 3 liters of water, just mix another batch and then add the second batch and drink that as needed during your 5-day water fast. Now, what's important too is how to actually break the fast. So once you're done with the 5-day water fast, now it's time to break the fast. And it's really important to do this correctly because the digestive system hasn't received any kind of food or nutrients for an entire 5 days. So we want to start stimulating the digestive system again. So a great thing that you can do when you start breaking the fast after the 5 days is start to incorporate what's known as bone broth. And bone broth helps the digestive system. Bone broth particularly contains glycine, and glycine helps to repair and to rebuild the gastrointestinal lining. Glycine also helps to build the joints, specifically some of the amino acids that are within the bone broth. Secondly, you want to start incorporating high fiber vegetables. Now, for these vegetables, you want to steam or you want to slightly overcook them to help ease the body back into digestion. So this is one of the times where you don't want to start eating raw vegetables. You want to steam them or even overcook them a little bit just to make it easier for the digestive system to start to break those nutrients down. Thirdly, you want to start having probiotics. Probiotics help to restore the gastrointestinal tract's microbiome. The microbiome is super important because we actually have more cells within our gastrointestinal system than cells that are inside the body. And the microbiome help with digestion, they help the immune system function, and they help to maintain a normal, healthy gastrointestinal system. And then lastly, you want to start eating prebiotics. And prebiotics are the food for the probiotics to actually start growing and colonizing on. And prebiotics are foods that are very, very high in fiber. These will be things like onions, avocado, leeks, garlic, chicory root, asparagus, and bananas. So you want to start eating those as you start to break the fast. All right, so once we're done with a 5-day water fast, here's how we're going to start to introduce food back into the digestive system. So on days 1 and 2, you're going to start introducing things like bone broth, some very well-cooked vegetables, and cultured foods such as yogurt or kombucha. Now you can also start to incorporate probiotics too if you don't prefer yogurt or kombucha. Now after day 1 and 2, we go into day 3 and 4, and we're going to start introducing some whole foods, continue with probiotics. You're also going to introduce some prebiotics, and during this time you can start to introduce whole grains if you need to in moderation. You can start to introduce raw nuts, some raw vegetables instead of the well-cooked or steamed vegetables, and you can also start to introduce fruits. Now, once you get to day 5, this is where you're going to start to introduce some of the foods that are a little bit harder to digest, and these are things like pastured eggs, meats, things that have a higher fat and higher protein type content. So at day 5, you can start to introduce, your pastured eggs and your grass-fed beef. Now, here's some great resources for you as far as bone broth is concerned. And one of the things you want to look out for when you're getting bone broth is you want to make sure that the bone broth is actually coming from a great source. And a great source would be grass-fed organic bone broth. Number 2, if you also need to introduce probiotics into the system, at days 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, a great resource to get a lot of probiotics all at once would be this probiotic here. So this has 50 billion colony-forming units, and so this is a great way to get a lot of probiotics all at once. Now, the next thing I want to cover with you is called intermittent fasting. Now, this is also known as time-restricted eating, and this isn't really a nutrition plan, but it's a way of feeding the body. So when you're doing intermittent fasting, it's still important to be getting good nutrition. What intermittent fasting actually involves is it involves fasting for a certain length of time during the day, and then it's followed by a window in which you are feeding the body. So becoming an intermittent faster can definitely be a process. So it's not something that you actually start off with the end result of fasting for 20 hours a day and only feeding for 4 hours a day. So you can actually take it slow and start to introduce the body to get used to this version of fasting. So what I recommend, how to become a great intermittent faster, is to start off on your first week fasting for 16 hours a day and then feeding for 8 hours a day. So what this would look like was that this would be when you wake up in the morning, you skip breakfast. Your first meal of the day might be at noon, and as soon as you introduce your first meal of the day, you're going to be done eating by 8 o'clock at night. So that means you're going to be getting your food from noon until 8 o'clock. Now you can also do it like your first feeding might be at 6 o'clock in the morning and then eat until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it doesn't matter really the times that you're doing it. It's just that you're feeding for 8 hours and then fasting for 16. I always recommend, it's the easiest to skip breakfast because not a lot of people are really hungry in the morning. So they call it breakfast or break fast, because you are breaking your fast. So a lot of times, if you want to, you're not hungry, it's really easy just to skip breakfast, and your first meal of the day will be at lunch. Now, as you go into week 2, now you're going to start to shrink that window of feeding. So now you're going to be fasting for 18 hours a day and then feeding for 6. One of the things that you actually could do was have your first meal of the day at noon, and then your last time that you're feeding is done by 6 o'clock in the evening. You can also do 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 8 o'clock at night, or you could also do 6 o'clock in the morning and your last feeding is going to be at noon. Now, I don't recommend this for everybody, but if you can go into week 3, a great way to get even more of a harder, more stricter way to intermittent fast would be the 24. So 20 hours of fasting, 4 hours of feeding. This would literally be like skipping breakfast and lunch and then getting all your feeding from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock at night. So basically, you're trying to get all of your daily calories in within that 4-hour window of feeding. Now, I don't recommend that everyone do this, but some people have no issues going to 20 and 4. So I think a great goal to have is to become an 18-6 intermittent faster. Intermittent fasting is a way of eating, but obviously we want to make sure that we're getting good nutrition too. So these are going to be the best foods to eat, particularly when you're doing intermittent fasting. So great sources of carbs are going to be vegetables. Also some great sources of fruit that are going to be a little bit lower glycemic or have a lower sugar content, have more fiber, are going to be Granny Smith apples and berries. And a great way to get a great healthy source of carbohydrates and get about 5 to 6 servings of vegetables and greens all at once, and to get some digestive enzymes and probiotics would be what's known as max greens. And max greens are evaporated greens. 1 scoop of that you can put into a smoothie and it'll get you 5 to 6 servings of vegetables. Now, your great sources of protein are going to be grass-fed protein. Now make sure it's always grass-fed. This is going to be whey protein. So whey protein is a great source for building muscle, helping to burn fat. It's a great source for detoxification. Now some people do have a food allergy to casein or any kind of milk type or dairy type products, and so if you do have any kind of like intolerance to it, a great alternative would be perfect plant protein. So perfect plant protein also has a lot of protein, a lot of amino acids, and actually I will switch from 1 month to the other, going from grass-fed to the perfect plant protein. Now, in addition to that, they also have pure path protein. This is from bone broth. So again, bone broth is also a great source of protein because of the high glycine. Glycine helps the gastrointestinal system. Glycine also helps with detoxification. And for those of you who are looking to build muscle, a great way to get a lot of amino acids and proteins that help with muscle growth is branched chain amino acids. And so the Strength and Recovery Complex contains branched chain amino acids as well as glutamine. Glutamine is actually really good, not only for the digestive system, but glutamine is also great for muscle growth and muscle repair. Now, your sources of fat. Now, anytime that you're going to have fat, you're also going to have protein with it. So these are going to be great sources of protein for the most part. So great sources of fat are going to be grass-fed beef, wild caught fish, free-range poultry or chicken, having cage-free eggs. Butter is also a great source of fat, and raw nuts. So raw almonds, raw cashews, Brazil nuts, walnuts, macadamia nuts. Those are great healthy sources of fats. In fact, some of them are great sources of protein, for example, cashews. And then I'm really a huge fan of MCT oil. MCT oil is called medium chain triglycerides, and this comes from coconuts. And MCT oil is a really great source of energy for the body, and it's a great way to get a lot of fat at once. Remember, fat is your friend, and most of the people in the United States don't get enough healthy fats. I can also have virgin coconut oil. This is going to be coconut oil in its solid form, which is going to be great for cooking. You can also put it in coffee. Great way to get high amounts of fats all at once. Now, here's some foods to avoid, particularly when you're doing intermittent fasting. So I always recommend avoiding things like white bread, white pasta, white rice, white sugar, processed sugar. I also recommend avoiding white potatoes too, because this is all nothing but just starch inside of the potato. So I recommend, if you're going to have potatoes, have a sweet potato, which is going to be lower in sugar, but you can also just empty out the potato and then eat the outer covering of the potato. Things like potato chips, or things like sweetened beverages that contain high amounts of high fructose corn syrup, and then also your condiments. Watch out for a lot of sugar in your ketchups and your mustards, and also with your dressings. Your dressing will also have a lot of added sugar in it. So some sources of fat and protein to avoid, these are going to be things like your commercial beef, your packaged deli meats, any kind of processed meat, processed chicken, and then anything that contains any kind of hydrogenated oil. So things like packaged cookies and ice creams, peanut butter is going to contain a high amount of hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils. Again, if you're intermittent fasting, one of the goals is that you want to be reducing inflammation, and these foods right here are things that actually increase inflammation inside of the body. These are going to be things like vegetable oils and your canola oil. So watch out for things like canola oil, corn oil, vegetable oil, cottonseed oil. All of those different types of oil can be extremely inflammatory inside of the body. Here's some great resources for you when you are incorporating intermittent fasting. So these are the branched chain amino acids with glutamine. Again, the grass-fed whey protein, pure path protein from bone broth, and the perfect plant protein. These are great sources to get healthy amounts of protein into your nutrition. And then finally, the Max Greens makes it really easy to get your 5 to 6 servings of green leafy vegetables. Now, a lot of times people ask me about the T28 plan that I have in my book, Transformation 28. And the T28 plan is in fact a version of fasting. And the reason why it's a version of fasting is because the T28 plan actually focuses on keeping your insulin levels low by actually having a little bit higher amounts of protein throughout the day with one larger meal at night. So the goal of the T28 meal plan is actually to have moderate amounts of protein, a little bit higher fat during the day, and then at night you can actually fill in your protein, your carbs, and your fats at night. So really, the only time that you're getting any kind of carbs and you're spiking the blood sugar just a little bit is going to be at night. And this is actually, if people have some problems with intermittent fasting, particularly women, they actually do a little bit better when they're doing the T28 plan. So here's the T28 nutrition plan. Basically, you have one T28 smoothie for breakfast and lunch, and then you had 2 small snacks in between breakfast and lunch. And so things like raw nuts, raw seeds, or low glycemic, low sugar fruits and veggies. And then at night you have protein, fats, and carbs according to the T28 macronutrient calculator. So here we have a macronutrient calculator that helps you figure out, once you know your body fat percentage and your weight, as far as the T28 plan, how much fat, how much carbohydrates, how much protein you should be having every single day. And so if you want to actually see that calculator, go to transformation28.net and you will see the calculator on there, and you'll be able to enter in those numbers, and it'll give you a readout as far as what you should be consuming every single day. So here's some things to look out for if you have these conditions, if you're trying to incorporate a 5-day water fast or you're trying to become an intermittent faster. Number 1, type 2 diabetes. Now listen, if anyone has type 2 diabetes, fasting is actually a great way to help you overcome type 2 diabetes. However, you're going to need to talk to your doctor if you are taking any kind of insulin increasing medications. And the reason why is because your medications actually will need to be decreased very quickly. So you need to talk to your doctor on how you can start to decrease those medications. And the good news is that we've had people who have actually been able to go off of those medications within even 10 to 14 days. You should also be cautious if you're pregnant or nursing. So I actually say, if you are in fact pregnant or nursing, fasting can actually stop milk production. I always tell women who are pregnant or nursing who ask about fasting that really now is not the time to fast, but it is the time to actually be eating healthy and eat nutrient-dense foods. Now, also, anyone who has any kind of eating disorders, anorexia, bulimia, the first thing you really want to establish is a healthy relationship with food. So not eating is not a good first step for those people who have anorexia or bulimia. Now for children, I don't recommend any kind of fasting whatsoever, because children first and foremost should focus on eating healthy, nutrient-dense food first, especially while they are still growing. Now, occasionally, with people who have gout, doing any kind of fasting can increase uric acid production inside the body, and this can make gout worse. So just as a precaution, this can be worse. You can still fast, but just keep that in mind and pay attention if you start to increase symptoms. Now, gastroesophageal reflux disease, or GERD, this can also increase. And if this is the case, you may see some increased symptoms of reflux. Just try eating some salad greens or some green vegetables, even if it's during a 5-day water fast, just to prevent an increase in symptoms while you are still enjoying a lot of the benefits of fasting. And then finally, adrenal fatigue. There's a lot of people today that suffer with adrenal fatigue. We call them just plain tired, adrenal collapse, having issues with low cortisol production, having issues with the hormones, with testosterone or estrogen or progesterone, or any kind of thyroid issue. And here's my take in regards to that. With adrenal fatigue, I say yes to intermittent fasting, but for a 5-day water fast, I would avoid doing this because this can increase some of the adrenal stress. So intermittent fasting, definitely yes, but a 5-day water fast, no. Now, there is a difference between men and women and fasting. And fasting in general for women is going to affect ovulation and fertility and hunger more than men. And what that means is that means if a woman is going to be doing a 5-day water fast and they're of the age where they're having a normal menstrual cycle, the body actually looks at this as starvation. And so this can affect the hormones of fertility, estrogen and progesterone. Now, typically too, and if you think about it, the body doesn't want to carry a baby if it thinks it's in starvation mode. So this can definitely play a role with your hormone levels. And the other thing is that women typically are a little bit more sensitive to the hunger hormone known as ghrelin. Typically during a 5-day water fast, women who are fertile will have a lot more hunger cravings just because they're going to be a lot more sensitive to the hunger hormone ghrelin. So what about the thyroid? So for the thyroid, you can see when you undergo fasting, particularly a 5-day water fast, you can see a decrease in production of T3. And this is actually normal because your body says, hey, we need to go into protection mode. We don't need a metabolism that's going high. We need the metabolism to actually dial down a little bit if we're in starvation mode. So it's not uncommon to see your T3 levels actually drop while you're doing the fasting. And that's okay if you understand that the end goal is that you're going to start to introduce food, obviously, again, in the body. What about women when it comes to intermittent fasting? So, a lot of times women may have some issues with intermittent fasting. Again, their hormones are different. And whether it's a 5-day water fast or whether it's intermittent fasting, if you're having some issues with that, with intermittent fasting, for example, and your hunger is just getting out of control and you've actually been doing it for a few weeks and energy is not good, then try something a little bit different. And this is actually called 5-2 fasting. And so basically what this is that you're eating for 5 days out of the week and then fasting for 2 days out of the week. But you're also fasting on non-consecutive days. So what that means is that may be that you are eating on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, you fast on Wednesday, and then you eat on Thursday and Friday, and then you fast on Saturday. So 3 days of feeding, 1 day of fasting, 2 days of feeding, 1 day of fasting. And typically women, if they're having some issues with a 5-day water fast or intermittent fasting, they find that actually modifying it by doing a 5-2 fast actually works really well for them. Now, I want you guys to download a free resource, a free gift from me to you, and it's the Guide to Fasting that I wrote for you. And this has all of the resources that I went over during this webinar. All you have to do is you have to text EHCFasting to the number 44222, and you'll receive your free fasting guide in your inbox within just a few short minutes. Inside of this guide, I have how to become an intermittent faster, how to do a 5-day water fast, the recipe that I went over, and then all of the foods and resources, minerals that you need to order in order to properly perform a 5-day water fast. So everything that I went over in this webinar is going to be in that guide. All you have to do again is text EHCFasting to number 44222. Once you do that, it's going to ask you for your email. And once you put your email in, it will send that resource to you right away. Guys, I hope you enjoy how to fast for healthy longevity. Let me know how you do, whether it's a 5-day water fast or whether it's becoming an intermittent faster. Let me know how that benefits your health, how it increases your immune system function, how it decreases inflammation, and helps you with better energy control. We'll see you soon.